everybody, welcome to the channel. I'm Cindy Daychuck with Queen Bee Creations, and I'm going to be taking you on a journey with this piece. Well, actually two pieces. So there's a rocking chair in behind, and there's this kind of blanket box, cedar lined. Obviously we're not touching the inside, but this is a piece from a customer. So these are customer pieces that I am going to be fixing up for them. And I thought that while I'm doing that, I might as well take you on a journey with me and talk a little bit about the process and those kinds of things. So obviously the first thing is talking with the client about what look they're after. Do they have an idea? What was their favorite color? Do they want distressing? Do they not? And these are important things because sometimes people are dropping them off and they're just going, I want them painted, and they've never stopped to think about it. And, you know, they say, oh, I want it white. And then they come and get it and they go, oh, I wanted it white distressed. And then they're going to black. And you're going, okay, but I would have had to have painted it black first and then paint the white. And so you have to kind of walk them through a bit of the process. I love it when clients already know exactly what they want, but it's really rare. So usually I get them to maybe go on Pinterest, come up with pictures. What is it that they're after? And with this piece, which if I had it on my own, if I had just picked it up, what the client wants is nothing like I would have done to it. So she really wants like a beachy vibe. And what she loved was like a weathered wood with dry brushed colors over it. Totally different than what it looks like. So what we have decided to do, and then the rocking chair, so this goes into her spare bedroom for her granddaughter, and the rocking chair, oh, there's the rocking chair. I feel like I'm pointing way off to left field and away from it. But the rocking chair is going to go into her living room. Now, these are pieces that were her grandmother's that she doesn't want to part with, but they don't fit her decor at all. And much of the wood furniture in her living room is very pale, kind of washed light colors. So what we are going to do is we're going to start with the same base color, which is Cathedral Taupe by Fusion. It'll dry a little bit darker than this, but for this piece, it'll give us kind of that softer, beachy wood that obviously we're going to be doing more to it, but that will be the base color. So she just really wanted that soft beach feel. So this is kind of, think of this as our sand. This is the beach. And as for the rocking chair, it has to go rocking chair. It's got to go lighter than it is. And we're going to do more above this, but this is going to be our base. So I've already cleaned both pieces, and you can't see, oh, I'm so bad at knowing which way to point. You can't see, but I've also got the legs on this guy clamped because they were popping out. Now, there was a bunch of, I guess, the spindles that are already popped out, and somebody in the legs, they're already glued into place. Really bad glue job. So I was having to I was having to chip off all of the drips from whatever it was that they had done. So not fun. And just know, if you're adding wood glue in, like I had to for a couple of pieces that I've got clamped right now, that when you're putting that in, you are going back and checking it a couple of times while it's drying to make sure that there hasn't been pieces, like some of the glue that's seeping out and that's dripping. Again, to me, it just makes sense, but obviously whomever had painted this out or glued this out hadn't stopped to think of it. And so there's a lot of drips that I didn't want to be painting over because it's just not going to look very nice. So all that we're doing to start is taking this soft Cathedral Taupe color and painting the entire piece. So we're going to be getting it all painted out. I'm going to start on the top painting it just because then I'm going to be lifting this up and out of the way And that's going to help me get that little bit of the underside and just this upper lip. Again, not painting on the inside. You don't want to, you don't want to destroy the beauty of the cedar and its properties, right? If we paint over that, then it's not going to be, helping anything after that for preserving. And she's going to use this in her spare room for her granddaughter and storing excess linens in it as well. So I'm going to need to get 2 base coats on both of these pieces. And so the first base coat of Fusion is just a lighter coat. I'm not looking for it to be perfect, but I am looking for it to have kind of a nice smooth consistency, no big blobs or anything, so that my second coat will go on smooth. So I'm going to come back once we've got those coats. I'm going to come back once we've got those coats on, and then we'll look at how we're going to make it even beachier and what we're going to do to soften that one further. This is the top of our chest, and I thought that might give you the best view of what we're going to be doing. Because this is meant to have kind of a beachy look to it, and they wanted it to go kind of a little bit more rustic than it is, we are doing dry brushing over this. I almost poured that in, and that's where I want to dry brush off onto. Okay, close. So I'm dipping my brush into the paint, and I'm starting with Seaside by Fusion. Oh, little spots, we'll fix that. And what I want to do is on my plate, I want to get rid of a lot of this. This is my darkest color, and it's the one I'm going to use the least amount of. So I don't want tons of this. I just want it to create a bit of a base. And so I'm just going to be dragging my brush very lightly across the piece, and I can come backward, but I want this to be quite light. I just want this color peeking through. And I want to do this, in essence, I mean, I get because we painted it that there's no real green to this, but I want to kind of give the semblance of a wood grain. So you can see I have almost no paint on here. And I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer now so that you can see, but I haven't dipped again yet. It's still very light. There you go. You can see how faint that is. I'm stronger on the edging because that's where I've got most of the paint, and that's okay for this color because I want to mostly cover this up. It'll be more the edges that define this color on the piece more than anything else and give it a little bit of an anchor. But you can see it's very light, very subtle. I'm going to be doing the whole top with just that little bit of paint that I took off originally out of the container. And what I don't want to do is have like big harsh stop lines. If I, in here, I'm kind of going, oh, I'd like a little bit more. So I need to kind of drag this and then push it a little bit more upright as I get to that. Start almost parallel to the piece and then move it more upright when I want to introduce some of that color a little bit more into the center where maybe I missed a little bit. So I'm going to get this color over the entire piece, and then we'll come back when it's time to layer the next one. All right, so here's where we're at. You saw me start to put the first layer of dry brushing on. Then we were going to be adding a bunch of this blue, some of the other blue, adding in some white, starting to build up the layers so it starts looking like it's kind of a beachy, weathered wood kind of look. Now, it's getting changed. My client showed me a picture of a bench that she saw that she really liked, which is in a chippy finish. So now we're painting the whole thing in the French eggshell blue, and then we are going to get some milk paint out and try and chip back to it and create more of a chippy look. So really what it means is we're pivoting. We're changing direction entirely, and we've got the wrong color base coat on. So we're going to switch it over to this beautiful soft eggshell blue, which when we do the chippy finish, hopefully it gets revealed. Hopefully we get some chipping, and we go from there. So here's the thing. This happens all the time. That often people don't fully think about what it is that they want before they get in here. And, you know, I start on a piece and then all of a sudden they're sending me pictures that are completely different looks or completely different processes and things. So it's one of the reasons why typically you always get them to sign a contract first, which stipulates the look, the process, the paint colors chosen, so that if all of a sudden your paint color changes, they pay for this too. You know, when this whole thing is finished, they pay for this paint that they chose and my time in painting that color, even though that color won't be seen when it's finished. Now that we're committed in this direction now, so praying for no more phone calls. I need to mix up my milk paint, and I will be doing 2 coats of this. I'm using Sweet Pickins while I have it. I will probably be getting in some of the Fusion milk paint instead, but you know, it is what it is right now. Use what you got. So I like to mix my milk paint in warm water, and I like to add the powder to the liquid just so I don't end up with you know, blobs of the paint sitting on the bottom. And once it's mixed, I like it to sit for about 15-20 minutes. Let the milk solids absorb. So I use an immersion blender when I'm mixing it. It just makes it a lot smoother and easier to be able to use. So I'm gonna do 2 coats on this. And you want the milk paint, I kind of made a mess in my hand, but you want the milk paint to be, you know, a nice kind of paint thick texture. I'm gonna add a little bit more to mine actually, because it's a little thinner than I want, but I don't want it to be super thick. I mean, that's definitely gonna crackle. The other thing that now that I'm mixing it up, I wanna do is I wanna add some Extra Bond. And Extra Bond is just a liquid that helps minimize some of the chipping. And there's no rhyme or reason to the amount. It's a bit of a crapshoot. Really. Milk paint's gonna chip or not chip. Sometimes it's got a mind of its own. So sometimes I don't use Extra Bond hoping for a lot of chipping, and I get chipping. You know, hoping for a lot of chipping and I get no chipping. And sometimes I use Extra Bond hoping for minimal chipping and I get tons of chipping. Go figure. So I'm just gonna finish mixing this up and let it sit for about 15 minutes, and then we'll come back as I start to apply it the first time so that you can see kind of the thickness that I've got it, and we'll go from there. There's no magic to the painting part. Milk paint is just like any other paint, right? So we're just going to do a nice even coat of this to begin with. Let it sit, and I will be doing I will be doing a second coat. I've got a number of coats of the milk paint on here, and I can see some spots that are chipping, mostly in this area, not so much on the body. I want to sand the whole piece lightly. Now I'm using 320. I'm sanding it lightly. I'm not looking to sand it too much. That's it right there. It's enough to take the roughness. It just makes it perfectly smooth. So I'm going to be lightly sanding all of the piece. And you can see this chipping actually is really surprising me because it's not going down to the blue. I thought that we'd get the blue showing through rather than it going back to the original brown. So I'm going to sand the entire piece first. See how much natural chipping I got. And then we'll come back because I think I'm going to have to do a little bit of force sanding. Well, force chipping, not sanding, sorry. So I'm going to get the whole thing sanded, and I think that I'll use some of my sandpaper to bring back a little bit of the blue because it's kind of a shame to have covered it all up. And we'll see what we end up with. Now I want to get a little bit more chipping happening, so I'm going to try and force this a little bit. I'm just going to, lightly mist some of that milk paint with water, and then I'm going to take my heat gun to dry it. And you can start to see some of that paint starting to bubble up a little bit. Get a little bit of cracking happening. And then I can take more of my sandpaper and I can lightly sand and see what's happening. I'm getting a little bit of cracking up here and a little bit of that blue showing, and that's what I want. Well, you can see that I didn't get a lot of chipping at all. It did not want to chip, except all of a sudden down on the feet, big spots. I do have some little crackling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply my clear wax over the piece, and sometimes just that gets some chipping happening, but it's not chipping back to the blue at all. This piece has that cathedral taupe and it has the blue, and it's just stripping off all those layers and going back to the dark wood entirely. So I have to say I've never done the milk paint over fusion paint, and I thought that would actually work really well. I have great success with the milk paint over top of my DIY paint, which is the clay-based paint. So I thought that I'd get a lot of the color showing, and that doesn't seem to be happening. So one of the things that I did do was I mixed up some of that blue paint, that fusion paint, with my clear wax, and just with the idea of getting it down into some of those cracks that were showing up. And I'm not sure that's really bringing enough of the blue back, but it's enough for me to kind of, it kind of sits down in there. You'll be able to see when I give you a close-up of it more than anything else. But it's one thing to try to bring a little bit of the age and bring a little bit of that crackle back in, and then I'll take a look tomorrow and we'll see. So far, it's not the look that I expected or at all what I was going for. And that sometimes happens. I just like it to happen when I'm just playing with a piece and not when I'm working on a customer's piece. All right, let me catch you up. I have buffed this, so, oops, it's plugged in. I used 2 different buffers to make sure that it was nice and buffed, nice and dry. As you can see, it continued to chip last night. Now, I don't have as much blue on here as I was hoping for. I was hoping it would chip back to the blue, and instead it's chipped right through the taupe and the blue and right back to the brown. So I am taking some of our original blue and I am just lightly dusting it in. Now to do this, I've got a small paintbrush and I'm going toward the edges so that it's all got kind of that jaggedy look and feel. And it's okay if some of the brown shows. And I'm wiping it back from anything over. I've got a wet cloth. So if I happen to go over, I'm taking it off. And I'm just adding some of that back in so that I get more of the blue, right? Not as harsh as the brown. So I'm doing that. And then in this ridge, I'm adding in a blue stripe. And again, not because you can see it tons, but because I can see it. And I just want more of that blue. I want a little bit of a lighter feel and more of that beachy feel. Now, I'm not sure about these lines, but I'm thinking if I paint it down in and then I immediately wipe away because it is sealed, then I'm going to get those blue lines in there. That's what I'm doing. And then this piece is done. Now, I know some of you are going to say, hey, didn't you wax that and you're painting over the wax? Yes, 1, the wax is dry. 2, the wax is buffed. And 3, I'm not looking for a nice even coat. If this whole thing had been waxed and then I'm rolling on a bunch of paint, there's going to be some resist happening. Really old pieces that have been waxed, I've painted over no problem. By then, most of the paint, the wax is so hard and so worn off, it's not an issue. This is freshly waxed, so as much as it's kind of dry and everything is not fully cured, so there is going to be a bit of a resist, but again, we're doing a chippy look, so if it means that some of that paint ultimately flakes off a little bit, it's still going to be fine. It's still going to be okay. If I was looking for something to look pristine and brand new, then obviously this wouldn't be something that I would do, but in these little spots, it's going to be fine. So that's what I'm doing to finish this one off, and then we still have to deal with that baby in behind. For our rocking chair, the last step is we want to have a little bit of a whitewashed look on this rather than just the flat paint. So I'm going to be taking white wax, and I have white wax from DIY here, and I am going to be painting it on, so brushing it on all over. So let me just get a section done here for you. And then I'm going to take a clean lint-free rag and I'm just going to lightly, sorry about my head, wipe it back. So I just want to have that light kind of whitewashed effect. Now I could have watered down a fusion paint and done the same thing with that, but then it wouldn't be sealed. I'd have to seal it again. The wax is a sealer and it's going over top of a sealer, so I'm fine now. I can just let this dry. And when it's dry, if I like that kind of matte look of it, I can leave it. If I wanted a little bit smoother, a little bit of a sheen to it, I can buff it. But all that I need to do now is paint it on, wipe it off. and then this one can be left to dry. These are our 2 pieces finished. I mean, completely different looks. One of the things that I did with this one was, especially where I painted in that blue to make it a little bit more unified, I white waxed it, and it kind of just softened it, tied it in, it filled in the gaps, any edging. So yeah, way better. I love the blue peaking rather than the dark brown. This, you know what? It was okay in the cathedral taupe. Love it so much better with the white wax on it. I'm gonna let it dry overnight because it hasn't had a chance to dry yet. But I'm gonna let it dry overnight and then decide then whether I'm gonna buff it. I'm betting I don't. I like it just in that matte look without the sheen. This has been buffed. It's got that sheen happening because I added in a little bit of the white wax here. I'll rebuff it again tomorrow, just so that any of those spots become just as silky smooth as the rest of it. 2 quick makeovers for a customer, 2 different looks, 2 different rooms for her. Hope she loves them. Let me know what you think, and definitely look forward to seeing you on the next one. Until then, take care.